All right, rugby fans, buckle up, because today we are diving deep into the world of South African rugby. But hold on, we're not talking about tries or tackles today. No, sir, we are going deep into the financial scrum that's happening off the field. It's a battle for the future of the sport. And trust me, it's a game with some seriously high stakes.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. We're talking about the South African Rugby Union, or SARU, as they're better known. They're looking to sell a big chunk of their commercial rights, and it's causing quite a stir.
Commercial rights, that sounds pretty corporate. What does it actually mean for us regular fans?
Well, basically, it's about who controls the Springboks brand and how it makes money. Think broadcasting deals, sponsorships, even those iconic green and gold jerseys you see everywhere. It's all about bringing in big investment to try and boost the sport's presence on a global scale. A bit like what the All Blacks have done so successfully.
So more Springbok games on TV, more merch, and maybe even more matches overseas.
You got it. It's about expanding the Springboks' reach and turning them into a global brand.
Sounds like a good idea, but I've heard this whole deal's been a bit of a roller coaster ride.
Oh, you have no idea. It's been more twists and turns than a Peter Stuff du Toit run.
So let's break it down, starting with the first bid. What happened there?
Right. So first, out of the gate, we had this U.S.-based company called the Ackerley Sports Group, or ASG. They swooped in with a massive offer, R$1.4 billion, for a 20% stake in Sazer's commercial arm. They were all about globalizing the Springbok brand, as they put it.
Globalizing. That sounds impressive, but what does it actually mean for fans like you and me?
Well, imagine seeing more Springbok games broadcasted in your country, finding official merchandise more easily, and maybe even witnessing the Springboks play more matches on international soil.
Okay, so more exposure for the box, potentially more access for fans all over. Sounds like a win-win, right?
Right.
But here's where things get a little weird. The majority of provincial unions actually voted against this big money offer from ASG. What went wrong?
Well, it's not as simple as just cashing a big check. A lot of people had serious doubts about giving a foreign company even a 20% stake. They were worried about ASG having too much influence over South African rugby.
So even with a minority stake, they could have swayed decisions.
Exactly. Some people felt that a US-based company might not fully grasp the cultural significance of rugby in South Africa. They were afraid that profits would be prioritized over tradition and the values that make South African rugby special.
So it's not just about the money, it's about the heart and soul of the sport.
Absolutely. Plus, there were some raised eyebrows over the commissions that were going to a third party, Eddie Jordan's company, no less.
Hold on, Eddie Jordan, the Formula One guy.
The one and only. It all felt a bit murky and raised questions about transparency and hidden agendas.
So not just about control, but also about who benefits from the deal.
Precisely. The provincial unions wanted to make sure any investment actually benefited the sport at all levels. From grassroots to the professional game, it had to be about more than just a quick buck.
So ASG's bid hit a bit of a snag, not just on the financial side, but also in terms of understanding the culture.
You could say that. They maybe underestimated the importance of local support and being open and honest with everyone.
Which brings us to the next chapter in this saga. With ASG out of the picture, at least for now, two South African consortiums enter the arena, each with their own plan for the future of the Springboks.
That's where things get really interesting. We've got a real clash of philosophies here. On one side, we've got a consortium led by some big-name franchise owners, including the billionaire businessman Johan Rupert. They're all about using their business experience and financial muscle to make the Springboks a global commercial force.
So it's like a corporate takeover of the Springboks.
In a way, yes. They see this as an investment opportunity, pure and simple. They're confident that with their experience and networks, they can take the Springboks brand to a whole new level.
Right, so big money, big plans. But what about the other consortium? They're a bit different, right?
Totally different. This group is all about empowering the fans. They want to give ordinary South Africans the chance to become shareholders in the Springboks.
So you could own a piece of the Springboks. That's pretty cool.
It's a bold idea, that's for sure. They're betting on the collective power of the South African rugby community. Their vision is all about shared ownership and making sure the Springboks belong to the people.
So we've got these two very different approaches, each with their own pros and cons. And lurking in the background, we still have ASG potentially ready to team up with a local group.
It's a three-way battle for the future of South African rugby.
A battle that will shape not just the financial side of the sport, but also the relationship between the Springboks and their fans, both in South Africa and around the world.
Yeah, it's a real nail-biter, isn't it? You've got these passionate fans who live and breathe rugby, and their beloved Springboks are right in the middle of this financial tug-of-war.
It certainly got me on the edge of my seat. But let's focus on those two South African groups for a minute. What are they actually proposing? Let's start with the one with Johan Rupert and the other franchise owners. What's their game plan?
Okay, so their whole thing is about using their business smarts and their deep pockets. They're proposing a pretty classic approach, really. Pump in some serious cash streamline operations and basically turn South African rugby into a global commercial powerhouse.
So they're aiming to make the Springboks a global brand like Manchester United or the Dallas Cowboys.
Exactly. They want to see the Springboks competing with the biggest names in global sports. They believe they can bring that same corporate mindset and turn the Springboks into a money-making machine.
So bigger salaries for players, more international matches, maybe even Springboks theme parks, who knows?
That's the kind of thinking they're bringing to the table. They're all about maximizing revenue streams and turning the Springboks into a global brand.
But wouldn't that risk alienating the core South African fan base? I mean, rugby is more than just a business in South Africa. It's part of their identity.
That's a really good point, and it's a concern that a lot of people have raised. There's a worry that if you focus too much on profits and global expansion, you might lose some of that unique South African rugby spirit.
It's like that saying, you can't put a price on tradition.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. It's a tough balancing act.
Now let's talk about the other group, the one that wants the fans to be the owners.
Mm.
How would their approach actually work?
Well, this is where things get really interesting. They're talking about setting up a system where ordinary South Africans can buy shares in the Springboks, so the fans would actually own a piece of the team.
It's like a giant rugby co-op.
You could say that. They believe that by giving fans a direct stake in the team, you create a much deeper sense of loyalty and connection.
And in theory, the profits would be reinvested back into the sport at all levels.
Right. It's a pretty compelling vision.
I mean, imagine having a say in how your favorite team is run and knowing that your investment is helping to grow the sport.
It's a powerful idea and one that's really resonating with a lot of fans. Yeah.
But can a fan-owned model actually work in the cutthroat world of professional rugby?
That's the big question, isn't it? It would definitely require a carefully designed structure. You'd need a way to balance fan input with the need for experienced professionals to make those big decisions.
So passion is great, but you still need expertise to run a successful rugby team.
Absolutely. It would be a fascinating experiment, though.
And let's not forget about ASG. They're still lurking in the background, potentially looking to partner with a South African group. How would that change things?
Well, if ASG teams up with a local group, it could create a kind of hybrid model. You'd have that international business expertise combined with a deeper understanding of the South African rugby landscape.
So maybe it would address some of those concerns that were raised about their initial bid.
It's possible, but it would also raise some new questions, like who really calls the shots in that kind of partnership?
A clash of cultures in the boardroom.
It could happen. And it just goes to show how complex this whole situation is. We're not just talking about money here. We're talking about the soul of South African rugby and its place in the world.
It's a decision that will have a huge impact on players, fans, and the entire sport.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, it's the fans who are going to be most affected by this decision.
So let's put ourselves in their shoes. Imagine you're a delegate representing your provincial union. You've heard all the proposals, weighed the pros and cons. Now it's time to cast your vote. What would you choose and why? Tough choice, right?
Yeah.
Each option comes with its own set of possibilities and potential pitfalls.
It really does. It's a decision with far-reaching consequences.
Okay, so let's play this out scenario by scenario. Say that Consortium with Johan Rupert and the franchise owners, they get their way. What kind of changes might we see on the field?
Well, if they're in charge, you can bet things will get a whole lot more corporate. Think bigger salaries to attract those international superstars. You know, the kind of players who can light up a stadium. A more structured approach to development, maybe even scouting young talent from overseas. And of course, a relentless focus on winning those big trophies.
So they'd be aiming to turn the Springboks into a global rugby powerhouse, a team that's feared and respected all over the world.
Exactly. They'd be going all in on building a team that can consistently compete for those top honors.
But wouldn't that risk diluting that unique South African rugby style? That grit and passion that makes the Springboks so special?
It's a valid concern. You don't want to lose that heart and soul that makes South African rugby so unique.
It's a tough balance to strike.
Hmm.
Now let's flip the script and imagine the fan-owned consortium Oldfest Capital. They win the bid. What would that mean for the Springboks?
Now that's where things get really interesting. With the fans in charge, you could see a shift towards a more grassroots-driven approach. More emphasis on nurturing local talent and building a team that truly represents the communities it serves.
So let's focus on those big-name signings and more on developing homegrown heroes.
Exactly. It would be about building a team that reflects the heart and soul of South African rugby and making sure that the benefits of success trickle down to all levels of the game.
Sounds great in theory, but can a fan-owned model really work in the professional era? It's a tough business, and decisions need to be made quickly and decisively.
That's a fair point. It would require a very carefully designed structure. You'd need a system that balances fan input with the need for expert decision making.
So you can't just let the fans run wild. It needs to be a collaborative effort.
Right. It would be a fascinating experiment, though.
Now let's not forget about ASG. They're still out there potentially looking to join forces with a South African group. How would that kind of hybrid model work?
Well, that's a bit of a wild card, isn't it? It would really depend on the specifics of the partnership. Who has the majority stake? How are decisions made?
It could be a recipe for disaster, or it could be the perfect blend of local knowledge and international expertise.
It's hard to say for sure, but it highlights the complex reality of modern sport. Globalization is here to stay, and finding a way to navigate that while preserving the unique character of a sport is a challenge for everyone.
So this isn't just a business decision, it's a decision that will shape the future of South African rugby. And it's the fans, the people who fill the stadiums and wear their hearts on their sleeves, who will be most affected.
Absolutely. This isn't just about money or profits, it's about the passion, the pride, the history that makes rugby so special in South Africa.
It's a reminder that sport is about more than just wins and losses.
It's about community, it's about belonging, it's about those moments that bring people together and create memories that last a lifetime.
Well said. That's it for our deep dive into the financial scrum surrounding the Springboks. We've explored the bids, analyzed the implications, and now it's over to you, the fans. What future do you envision for South African rugby? Let us know your thoughts, and until next time, keep that rugby spirit burning.